You've got 17 half-finished projects scattered across your life right now. A novel that died on page 43, a language app you opened twice, that business idea you were so sure about 3 months ago. And every time you abandon something new, there's this voice that whispers the same question: what's wrong with me? But here's the thing. Nothing might be wrong with you at all. The psychology of people who never finish what they start isn't about laziness or lack of discipline. It's actually way more interesting than that. We live in a culture that worships completion, finish lines, degrees, achievements you can frame and hang on a wall. So when you're someone who leaves a trail of abandoned projects behind you, it feels like failure, like you're broken in some fundamental way. But what if I told you that the inability to finish things isn't a character flaw? It's often a sign that something else entirely is going on under the surface. Let's start with the most misunderstood type, the person who starts things for the dopamine hit of newness. You know this pattern. The first week of anything is intoxicating. You're learning guitar and suddenly you're imagining yourself on stage. You're writing a screenplay, and you can already see the opening credits. Your brain is flooding with possibility, with potential, with that addictive feeling of becoming someone new. But here's what's really happening. You're not actually in love with guitar or screenwriting. You're in love with the fantasy of transformation. And the second the actual work shows up, the second it stops being novelty and starts being repetition, your brain checks out. It's not looking for mastery. It's looking for that next hit of, maybe this is who I become. This isn't lack of commitment. It's a dopamine-seeking pattern that mistakes excitement for purpose. And in a world designed to give us infinite options and constant stimulation, this pattern is becoming epidemic. Then there's another type, and this one's darker. The person who starts things with genuine intention, but abandons them the moment they start getting good at them. You'll see this person get 70% of the way through something, far enough that people start noticing, far enough that it's becoming real, and then they just stop completely, move on to something else. What's happening here isn't fear of failure, it's fear of success, or more specifically, fear of being seen. Because here's the twist. As long as you never finish anything, you never have to find out if you're actually good enough. You never have to deal with criticism, with judgment, with the possibility that your best effort wasn't special. The unfinished project exists in this perfect quantum state, where it could have been amazing. You're protecting yourself, but you're also imprisoning yourself. You get to keep your identity as someone with potential, without ever having to test it against reality. But here's where it gets interesting. There's a third type that nobody talks about. The person who doesn't finish things because they're actually too aware, too conscious of how much deeper everything goes. You start researching nutrition, and you end up in a rabbit hole about agricultural policy. You start learning piano, and you realize you need to understand music theory, which means you need to understand math, which opens up questions about sound waves and perception. Most people see this as distraction. But what if it's actually a form of intellectual honesty? What if you're someone who can't just learn the surface of something because you instinctively understand that everything connects to everything else? The problem isn't that you can't finish. It's that you're playing a different game. You're not trying to complete projects, you're trying to understand systems. And systems don't have endings. Most people don't realize that the modern epidemic of unfinished projects isn't just about individual psychology. It's about what we're being sold as achievement. We're told to find our passion, our purpose, our one true thing. But what if you're someone whose brain is wired for variety? What if your natural state is curiosity, not mastery? There's this assumption that depth only comes from sustained focus on one thing. But there's another kind of depth, the kind that comes from seeing patterns across multiple domains. The person who dabbles in psychology, photography, coding, and cooking isn't scattered. They're synthesizing. They're building a multidimensional understanding of how things work. And here's the uncomfortable truth that nobody wants to say out loud. Sometimes you don't finish things because they weren't worth finishing. We've been so conditioned to believe that quitting equals failure that we've lost the ability to recognize when something genuinely isn't serving us anymore. You're not weak for abandoning that podcast after 3 episodes. Maybe those 3 episodes taught you that you don't actually want to be a podcaster. Maybe the value was in the exploration, not the outcome. We treat every abandoned project like a crime scene, But what if it's just data, information about who you are and what actually lights you up versus what you thought should light you up? The psychology behind chronic non-finishing often traces back to something even deeper, a fundamental misunderstanding of what motivation actually is. We think motivation is supposed to feel like constant enthusiasm, like that fire in your belly energy you see in motivational videos. But real motivation, the kind that sustains long-term effort, doesn't feel like excitement. It feels like commitment even when you're bored. It feels like showing up on the days when the dopamine is gone and all that's left is the work. And if you've never learned what that feels like, if you've been chasing the high of starting instead of the quiet satisfaction of continuing, then of course you don't finish things. Nobody taught you that the middle is supposed to feel like this. So what does this all mean? It means that if you're someone who never finishes what you start, you first need to figure out which type you are. Are you chasing novelty because you're afraid of your own depth? Are you protecting yourself from being truly seen? Are you actually a systems thinker trapped in a goal completion culture? Or are you just still figuring out what's actually worth finishing? Because here's the real insight. The goal isn't to finish everything you start. The goal is to know yourself well enough to start fewer things that actually matter, to recognize the difference between genuine interest and borrowed ambition, to be honest about whether you're exploring or escaping. Maybe you're not broken. Maybe you're just overstimulated, misunderstood, and trying to force yourself into a productivity paradigm that was never designed for how your brain actually works. And maybe the most rebellious thing you could do isn't forcing yourself to finish everything. It's giving yourself permission to start things just to see what they teach you, and walking away when the lesson is learned. Which type are you? And more importantly, what would change if you stopped pathologizing it? If this landed, there's more psychology like this waiting for you. Subscribe for the kind of content that reframes your supposed flaws into something way more interesting. Drop a comment and let me know if you've ever finished reading a YouTube video description. I'll wait.